Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Hogarth's Global Astrology. Know your planets, know yourself. Okay, so I've got a little video for you guys. Now, this is going to be going out to my Chalice of Light membership first. Yeah, you guys are going to get it first. And I may or may not release this at some later date because I do think that this character that I'm about to talk about, who we're going to do a deep dive on, is very, very interesting indeed. So today's date is the 24th of July 2023, and it's quarter to, well, 22:42 at the moment, so almost quarter to 10 UK time here. And today, we're going to look at the chart of Madame Blavatsky. Yeah, Madame Blavatsky, who was, for those that may or may not know, she was a hugely influential psychic, medium, mystic, and philosopher who made a huge impact, on the 19th and 20th centuries. Even till this day, actually, there's still plenty of content and videos out there about Madame Blavatsky. She is also the founder of the Philosophical Society, which she founded in 1875. And we're going to look at all those different kind of things in her chart. Many stories. She's got her own accounts, extremely well traveled, which we'll see in her chart. I don't want to give too much away in the kind of the preamble. Immensely spiritual person, and I looked at her chart, and to me, as a Vedic astrologer, it is abundantly obvious why she was the character that she was and why she had the gifts that she had. So we're really talking about someone who, even though towards the end of her career she was sort of like ridiculed somewhat by the press and the media, and there were other various different factors in there, but as I've deepened my research of Madame Blavatsky, and I think I'm actually going to buy some of her books and other stuff as I kind of deepen my own knowledge of Eastern mysticism and astrology and stuff like that, because there's always more to learn. I may even go to India, folks, at some point. I feel it calling. Had a big download the other day, and it's just everything is sort of going that way, with my chart. And I think it is time now to actually steep myself kind of undiluted, as it were, in the waters of India and all that it has to offer. Even though I was kind of hoping to kind of do it later in life, I was sort of planning to kind of maybe do it when I turn 50 or something like that, but it has come much sooner. So anyway, but that's a little kind of like digression. So let's look at her chart. In fact, it's actually quite easy to read, because at least for me anyway, it's so clear. It is so clear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen in the usual way, and then we'll talk a bit about Madame Blavatsky, and then let's click on that and let's do share. And then we see this part come up like this, and then let's go to the chart here, which I've already got open. Voila. And you should be able to see this, but I can't see myself. And I do like to be able to kind of see myself a little bit, just to make sure that my head is straight and I'm not, it's just not going weird. Let's go like this. In fact, what I'll do is I will, on momento, oh, come on. When the cursor is not quite doing its arrow thing. There we are. Let's go like that. Let's go like this. That's enough. And let's go down like so. Just so we can get a bit more of the chart in there. And let's move this over a touch more. Voila. Let me just make sure you can see that. Yes, you can. Okay. Right. So this is Madame Blavatsky's chart. So we'll start with the basics. She was born on the 12th of August, 1831. And she was born at 2:17 a.m. And she was born in, let's just see here. I've got a printed version of her chart as well. I was going to make notes on it, but I don't need to. And she was born in Ekaterinoslav, Ekaterinoslav, which is now modern day Ukraine. Yeah, now modern day Ukraine. I think it was back part of Russia or Prussia. I think it was Russia, you know, back then. Forgive me for not knowing exactly, because of course, when it came to Ukraine and all that stuff, Catherine the Great and all of this kind of stuff, the original annexation of Crimea, etc. But at that time, I think it was Russia, but today it is now in the Ukraine. Madame Blavatsky was an aristocrat. She had royal blood. She had a royal lineage. Now, of course, as far as we're aware, and with the matters of that happened in history, of course, there are no more royals, as far as we're aware, at least in Russia, in terms of from that sort of like those original bloodlines, because of course, you have the Romanovs who were exterminated by the Bolsheviks, of course, in the Russian Revolution and stuff like that. And sadly, you know, it's become things of legend, but they were murdered. Yeah, they were murdered, sadly. Anyway, but this isn't about necessarily royal blood or stuff like that. So we're gonna dive straight into the chart. Now, of course, you guys have seen me do the charts before, and for me, just looking at her chart, it is absolutely obvious to me why she's interested in Eastern philosophies. It is just so abundantly clear. But let's start with the basics. She has a Gemini rising. Yeah, so she's Gemini rising, and she also has something here, which is another little giveaway. She also has K2 in Aquarius. Yeah. So first of all, this is what I found. People that have ascendant or planets in Gemini or ascendant and planets in Aquarius are very intelligent people. Now, all signs are intelligent, of course, they all are. But when a person has both, that they are particularly intelligent and clever, because Gemini is the most curious sign out of all of the zodiac, but the second most curious is Aquarius. Yeah. So when a person has both, here we can see Madame Blavatsky has a Gemini rising, and then K2 is here, like I said, in Aquarius. So she's got both factors. What it does is it creates immense curiosity. Immense curiosity. Another thing that also, as well as the intelligence and the IQ, another thing as well that boosts the IQ and the intelligence is when the moon is in the signs of Mercury. So the moon can either be in Gemini, or it could be in Virgo, which you see it here. Or as well, the moon can do really quite well in Aquarius as well. In Aquarius, in the D1 or the D9. In the D9 is actually slightly better, actually, because this is actually showing the potential of the soul, where it's going, etc. But you can see here, she's got many factors here that speak about her profound intelligence. In fact, I think it's actually not unreasonable to actually say Madame Blavatsky was probably a genius. Particularly the more that I've actually learned, and particularly the things that she could do, let alone her extraordinary wisdom. Now, the thing is, she doesn't take credit for all of this per se. Let me have a quick slurp. Because she spoke about the masters that have taught her. But what I'm going to do is we're just going to go around house by house. We're going to look and see what's there. It becomes very obvious. So what we see here she has the sun. Now remember, the sun is known as the Atmakaka, or the Atma, the soul. The sun is the oversoul for everyone on planet Earth. Wherever the sun is, that is part of our spark from the divine this lifetime. Yeah, so from lifetime to lifetime, the sun sign, will change depending on the house and the sign. That will also impact the sun. But here we see Madame Blavatsky has the sun in the second house. Now, this is actually quite an important thing, because the second house, it deals with resources. It deals with resources. It deals with food. It deals with the face, the neck, the teeth. It deals with speech. It deals with family values. Yeah. And what it also means as well, because here the sun, which is the king, is in the sign of his wife, the queen, the sun also represents the physical body of the father. Jupiter represents secondary characteristics of the father or the husband in a woman's chart, assuming she wants to be married to a male. That will represent her husband, and also secondary characteristics of a significant brother. So if we go back here to the sun, we see the father is in the sign of the moon. And what that does is, overall, it's a lovely position for the sun. And what it does is it gives one a more nurturing father. Yeah, the father has more motherly qualities. Yeah, because the sign of Cancer is about what? Mothering, nurturing, helping things grow, etc., and stuff like that. And through the ups and downs and the travails of Madame Blavatsky's life, because I've watched several sort of talks and documentaries on her, one of the consistent things for her was that her father supported her wherever she was, because she was a bit naughty, gallivanting off in lots of different places, and he would send her money from time to time to keep her afloat. Also, as well, it shows those nurturing aspects of the father, because we need to understand as well, back in these days, I mean, she was born in 1871 in Russia. And of course, we also understand that in history at that time, women having a vast and deep and comprehensive education beyond, say, like the arts, for example, or, which again, it could actually be a fabulous education in itself. Look how much the arts can actually teach us. But as a woman of the aristocracy, or particularly the blue-blooded line, she would have been prepared for a good marriage, and she would have been educated in the arts, languages, and music and stuff like that. And on one way, you might think, oh God, well, that's just a bit patriarchal, isn't it? It doesn't include the sciences and that and the other. What I would say is this: my God, I wish more of us, not only young girls, but young boys, people in general, were more educated about the arts, the painters, languages, and stuff like that. So already that can give one quite a lot. But in her family, it defied the convention of the time. She was able to explore the sciences, debates, etc., all of this stuff. So she got more of what would be considered at the time a more masculine education on top of her wider cultural education. She was also introduced as well to different religions and philosophies and stuff like that, which is obvious here by her 8th house here, but we're not going to talk about that yet. The most important thing to understand about Madame Blavatsky's sun in her chart here is that it's in the nakshatra called Aslesha. Aslesha. Now, this is a much maligned and shall we say besmirched nakshatra, yeah, because that has a little bit of a reputation. I'm going to show you where it is here. Here it is, Aslesha here. So here on the nakshatra wheel, let me just put that there. There it is. That's Aslesha, which sits here within at the end of Cancer, the sign of Cancer here. And of course, there's 27 nakshatras, etc. Each nakshatra has its own deities and its own symbolism and its own meaning. So straight off the bat, what is Aslesha about? Now, Aslesha is a Mercury-ruled nakshatra. Mercury-ruled. So again, Mercury deals a lot with the intelligence. So this is a very intelligent nakshatra straight off the bat. But it also has the energy of the moon, because of course Cancer the moon is the ruler of Cancer. Now, when Mercury and moon are together, it speeds up the mind. Really does speed up the mind. And so there is a speediness of the mind and the emotions when it comes to this nakshatra. Now, the shadow of this nakshatra, now, who are the deities of Aslesha? The deities of Aslesha are called the Nagas. And the Nagas are said to be this dragon race of people that live underground in a world illuminated by beautiful gemstones. I know it's far-fetched, but, you know, this is Vedic astrology. And they're a dragon race. They're a serpent race. Now, of course, if we think in terms of the caduceus, yeah, or look, here's my wand here, but you know, the snakes going around the staff, yeah, which of course for millennia, literally millennia, has been, oh look, I'm rummaging, has been the symbol for medicine, wisdom and stuff like that. Because you've got to remember, like back in the day, you know, after the great fall of history and society in the Dark Ages, you know, many people fell out of education. There we are. This is almost like the staff of Mercury here. Love. There you go. See the entwined serpents. So here, so this is a Mercury ruled nakshatra, and it deals with deep wisdom. The Mercury ruled nakshatras often have a lot to do with mysticism, because the other nakshatra that Mercury rules is called Jyeshtha, which is at the end of Scorpio. And then the other one after that is Revati, which is at the very end of Pisces. It's the 27th nakshatra. And they're all mystical. So even though Mercury as a planet, when it's expressing itself in its more mundane form, in its more ordinary form in a person's chart, being logic, practicality, wit, calculative ability, business, trade, goods, services, communication of all kinds, emails, you know, language, writing, all of that kind of stuff. Mercury's nakshatras that it rules are deeply mystical. So here we see the intellect and the mysticism is combined in Aslesha. And here she's got the sun here, which is the kingdom. So Aslesha is really known as, now the shadow of Aslesha can deal with poison. Yeah, why poison? Because snakes have venom. It can also deal, this nakshatra is also deals with mental health issues, disturbances of the dreams, the mind. Self-doubt is associated with this nakshatra. What else? However, even though it has those connotations, what we need to understand with poison, it all depends on the dose, because poison in the right dose can become medicine. Yeah. So this nakshatra is very mystical. People will either have their ascendant here, or the sun here, or the moon, will be very interested in esotericism and mysticism and all of this kind of stuff like that. I put my hand up here, guilty as charged. Yeah, my ascendant is in Aslesha. Surprise, surprise. You know, not that I'm comparing myself to a Madame Blavatsky, but there's some spooky similarities here for me. Let me just put it that way. My moon is in Gemini, hers is in Virgo. Anyway, but this isn't about my chart, whatever. It's about her, but I can recognize very easily certain things. So here we're dealing with a mystic. We're dealing with someone that is interested in the hidden knowledge. Where do snakes live? They often live in holes or in caves. they move across the ground in such a way that they pick up the vibrations through their body. Their tongues are forked, and the tongues not only taste but also smell and also have sensory perception as well. This is why you see the tongue always flicking out, almost like the whiskers of a cat. Because remember, a cat's whiskers also have tremendous sensory ability and give a huge amount of information. So is the same for the snake of the tongue of a snake. They often have, their eyesight is not great, but they often have a great sense of smell. And one of the things with snakes, unless they're kind of particularly tree hunting snakes that hunt in the daylight, in which case their eyesight is good, but most snakes hunt at night. If you're a rattlesnake, for example, you know, it doesn't matter if your vision's a little bit dull because you're relying on surprise and your venom, yeah, to get the stuff done. Anyway, the point is that really the snake is about inner sight. It is the universal, is the symbol of what? The Kundalini energy. So Astrology in particular, even though it has a bad reputation, has a tremendous amount to do with deep, deep mysticism, sages, the mysteries, yeah, the mysteries, the high initiates in life. This is actually the positive side of Astrology. Those people, because they're more attuned, naturally they have that vibration, that sense of the hidden, the occult, and that's all the occult means. Actually, it just means hidden. The snake is already, or the Kundalini energy, as it were, is already active in those people. So it doesn't take that much for them to, once they start exploring their powers, they can actually make a tremendous amount of progression. For, by all accounts, this is really what happened with Madame Blavatsky. Here, it's also in the second house, and the second house doesn't only just deal with money. In fact, having the sun in the second house can be a bit of a pain in the ass, because the sun is said to burn a hole because it's so hot, burn a hole in whatever house it's in. And if the second house is money, then of course that can affect finances. And at one point, bless her, she had to work in a sweatshop to try and make her ends meet. But anyway, so maybe money wasn't necessarily her strong point, but she was gifted in many other ways. But the most important thing to understand as well is this, is that there are 5 signs I've identified that love to teach. Yeah. Gemini, sign of Cancer, Leo, 4-planet stellium here, Virgo and Sagittarius. Yeah, they're all teaching signs. And look, she's very well stacked here. The second house also deals with speech. Yeah, speech. She has to have her seances and education. So we can see already from her chart that she's already quite an educator. But what really stands out for me the most, if we look down here, if we look, we see here she's got a stellium in Leo. So she's got Rahu, the north node of the moon, the manifest point of destiny, the direction ideally that we should be going in life. It's a bit more complicated than that, and I've saved a lot of those details for my book, but you know, roughly speaking. Then she's got Mars very strong here, because Mars is in a friendly sign. So let's remember who the friends are. Sun, Moon, Mars, Jupiter are all friends. They all do well in each other's signs. However, technically Mars debilitates in the sign of Cancer, which belongs to his friend the Moon, but is delighted. Saturn, balloon popper, Mercury and Venus, they're all friends. They all do well in each other's signs, and they all deal with business, yeah, the earthly realms, the negotiations, relationships, the practicalities of Earth school. They all do well in each other's signs, except Venus technically debilitates in the sign of Virgo. She's delighted, but not as delighted as Mars. Can cause some issues with relationships, and we'll look at those as well for Madame Blavatsky. Saturn as a planet, though, starves whoever he's with, even his friends, except Venus gets a little bit of chocolate. That's what I would say. When you see Saturn aspecting Venus, they say whenever Saturn looks at Venus, his heart melts. Whenever he's with her, he will starve her as well, but he gives her a little bit of chocolate, doesn't starve her completely. Yeah, but it's Saturn with Venus is not the best combination to have in the world. It's just one of those things. Anyway, so if we look here, we see tremendous complexity here. First of all, if we look here, let's just do some simple math. 1, 2, 3. So she's got a 4-planet stellium in the 3rd house. Now, when houses are empty, it doesn't mean they're not active. It just means they don't have as much emphasis. The more planets in the house, the more emphasis. What's the 3rd house all about? The 3rd house deals with communication of all kinds. It deals with education of all kinds. It deals with writing, yeah? Famous writer. You wrote 2 or 3 books, something like that. But, you know, you can see the writings were very impactful. So this is someone that is a writer, a gifted communicator, orator, because the 2nd house is speech, but the 3rd house is also speech as well, because that's also what? Communication, but particularly by the written word. It also deals with travel. She was had a huge wanderlust, huge wanderlust. I mean, she went everywhere. She went to the UK. She went to the Americas, met the native American peoples there to kind of understand things about them. Then she went down to India several times to learn from her masters. Then she went to Tibet and through France, and an extraordinarily cultured and well-traveled woman, which was, you know, for her time. I mean, ladies, of course, of the aristocracy were afforded more of an education, but she went far, far beyond that. So we can see here with this stellium here, that already just shows a writer on its own. And when you see here, particularly Mercury, the planet that deals with writing, and of course is the chart ruler because she's Gemini rising. So Gemini was rising on the eastern horizon at the time she was born, when she took her first breath. So wherever the chart ruler goes will show the emphasis of that person's of their whole life, their whole oeuvre. So if we see here, Mercury, the chart ruler, goes to the 3rd house of writing, communication, travel of all kinds. She was extremely learned. Again, Mercury is a planet of intelligence here in the 3rd house in Leo, but it's complicated. It's complicated. Mars here is in a friendly sign, but Saturn is not. Technically, Saturn is here in an enemy sign. However, when Saturn is in Leo, it has different qualities, which I'll explain. Mercury here does okay in Leo. Mercury prefers to be in not water, certainly not water. He prefers to be in air signs and earth signs. Yeah, because they have a practicality. Earth signs have a kind of practicality and logic to them, which suits Mercury. And air signs, of course, deal with the intellect and the mind, which of course suits Mercury. Saturn, Mercury, and Venus all rule over the same elements. So they rule over the air signs and the earth signs. Yeah. So here, Mercury is with a friend that he's here with Saturn. Mars is in a friendly sign, but is with his enemy, Saturn. Rahu is friendly with Saturn, but is a bit of an enemy to Mars. So we see here, this house is very uncomfortable. And if we look at the degrees here, we've got Mars and Saturn in what I call a perfection. Whenever a planet is within 1.5 degrees of another planet, I call it a perfection. Here we can see here, Mars is at 11 degrees 20 minutes and Saturn is at 11 degrees 28 minutes. I mean, they're only 8 minutes apart. It's a perfect conjunction, but they're enemies. So what this shows is, it shows the tremendous upheavals and conflict and struggles there were in Madame Blavatsky's life, especially in terms of her communications and her travels. She was hugely influential because if we look here, this is the sign of Leo. Yeah. Now Leo is the sign of leadership. It's a very, very impactful sign. Anytime a person's got a stellium or, you know, planets in Leo, these people tend to have a bigger impact because, of course, it is the sign of the king. Many of people out there in Western astrology thinking that they're Virgos when actually they're Leos. However, there is another side to Leo, which isn't all lights, camera, and action. There is a shy side to Leo as well, which can also be deeply private. She was also a deeply private person as well. Here in Madame Blavatsky's chart, one can see that introvert, extrovert. There would have always been conflicts, challenges about her writing, what she wanted to say, how she wanted to get things down, how well her publications may or may not have been doing. Because Mars is the accelerator in life. He's Mr. Leadfoot, yeah? He always wants to put his foot down and go fast. But Saturn is the brakes. Yeah, so Saturn wants to delay, restrict. Let's take our time here before we give the rewards. So what this person has, anyone who's got this combination of Saturn and Mars together, they always feel a tug of war or a conflict within themselves. Or they're frustrated at how the pace of life goes. They try to go at breakneck speed and they always face obstacles, delays, something that slows them down. Or, for example, I mean, one of the things that she spoke about, now, believe it or not, Saturn combined with Mars can very often lead to travel disruption, delays, all of this kind of stuff when they're together or opposite. At the moment, if we look here, where is Mars? If we look, you see where it says TR. This is where the planets are right now. Saturn and Mars are opposite each other, been causing travel delays and problems and stuff like that. Mars is a hot, fiery planet, and he's in the sign of Leo, which is what, a fiery sign. What have we been seeing? The whole world burning up. Yeah, again, look what's happening in Rhodes in Greece, for example. You know, record temperatures. Of course, there are many people that still deny climate change, you know, that are being bamboozled and convinced that it's not so. Our summer over here this year is very tepid, quite damp. But you know what? Last year we hit 40 degrees for the first time in the UK, and that was astonishing. Never felt heat like that in the UK in my life. And a lot of villages, you know, burnt up. Yeah, we literally had about 10 or 20 sort of like things in the outskirts of London burning up. So my point is that Mars is heat. And here, when Mars is in Leo, it creates a very bombastic character. Very bombastic. Now, I'm not saying she's Donald Trump, but he's a very good example to use because he's got his Mars in Leo. His Mars is ridiculous, yeah, because it's also conjunct his ascendant as well. So he just thinks he's the king, yeah, and he's the only planet there. So there's no moderating. There's no moderating forces with Duck Larange. Here with Madame Blavatsky, it is different because, of course, you can see there is a multifaceted nature to her third house. So she allegedly, in some of her stories, she told people that she was shipwrecked at one point, managed to get back to Europe and this, that, and the other. There were a couple of times where she had riding accidents. And she said she was saved. Yeah, one of her masters would come, like she said, she fell off a horse, and she says the master protected her head, so she effectively didn't break her neck and die. But she had a riding accident at least twice, and all sorts of different kind of calamities and stuff like that. Because here you've got the Mars wanting to push, and Saturn wanting to hold back. So sometimes these people can hastily go into things and almost in a way kind of lose their balance, and then because they're rushing and they're not maybe paying attention, they can become more accident prone. And we can see here there's this immense fidgety energy within her chart because you've got Rahu here expanding things. Remember, Rahu expands like Jupiter but exaggerates them, so takes something to an extreme. So the nearest planets here are both Mars and Saturn together, with Mercury not far behind. So Rahu is boosting all of this. This is already the house of travel, education, learning new skills with the hands. Apparently she could make saucers, teacups float in the air, bring it to her, slurp, and send the thing back. one of the things that I put, one of the things that I've been writing about, and this is what got me more into Madame Blavatsky, because of course in my book I go into and I give the juice and the sizzle, yeah, of all the planets and stuff like that. And the discovery of planets really do help define epochs and consciousness within the human psyche here on Earth school. And when a planet is discovered, whatever's going on at that time is often associated with that planet. So Neptune was discovered in 1846, February 18th, 1846. And in 1848, a mere 2 years later, the Fox sisters, who are from upstate New York, some of you may already know who these people are, were speaking. Basically, they spoke to a dead man. This guy that sold bits and bobs apparently was found dead in the house, and he would communicate with all of these bangs and this, that, and the other. And, you know, they were able to prove convincingly that they could talk to this person and reproduce the phenomena, etc. They were then taken under the wing of a Mormon, no, Quaker couple, who, and the Quakers were all about anti-slavery, wanted to abolish slavery, they wanted women's rights, etc. So it turns out the radical Quakers were really quite ahead of their time. These Fox sisters, they took under their wing and introduced them to all of their friends, etc. And one thing led to another, and before you know it, so much of modern day mysticism, no, that's not correct. The mysticism and all of that stuff was already there, but it exploded from that point. So this is where we had seances happening in public. The spiritual movement really got underway. It started in the 1840s. So again, around that time that Neptune was discovered, but then it just accelerated from there. It really became a big phenomena. And then, of course, Madame Blavatsky, who of course was born in 1831, she would obviously was already born with her gifts. She was born before Neptune was discovered, but it was still very much, she still would have been very young, because look, she's 1831 here, and it was discovered in 1846. So she would have been, she would have been 13 or something like that. And so still very, very young. So she very much grew up under these energies, and psychic phenomena began to happen in her life quite soon. She was always, her family said she was a very strange young girl, always, you know, aware of other entities and stuff like that. But the thing I must remember before I move on, if we look here, her Rahu, Mars, and Saturn are all in a nakshatra called Magha, M-A-G-H-A. Magha nakshatra is associated with the star Regulus, the star Regulus, which is known as the star of kings. Now, I give an orb of 5 degrees or less for a tight conjunction. So here, Marga goes from 4 to 6 degrees of sidereal Leo. So, of course, if we count 5 degrees from the 6, so we go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So if we look here, we can see, aha, Madame Blavatsky has that conjunction with Regulus. So many of my clients have this placement. Yeah. I have this placement as well. My Jupiter is conjunct Regulus, and mine's at 8 degrees. So I feel like I'm in good company. Mine's even closer. But many, I've just drawn it in here. Many, oops, there we are. Many of my clients spookily have planets or their ascendant conjunct Regulus. Now, the point is, Magha nakshatra, it means to win a throne, because the symbol of it is the palanquin, which is, you know, when people used to be carried around, you know, like that. So it means to win a throne in life. So we've seen that very much with Madame Blavatsky. She had to battle for her throne. Leo is a male sign. She often traveled around the world herself, disguised as a man. Because you can imagine how radical that was back then, to be a female on your own traveling the world. So very often she actually disguised herself as a man. Obviously, that would have saved her a lot of hassle. But Marga Nakshatra, the deities associated with this nakshatra are called the Pitris. And the Pitris are our blood relatives who have deceased, or via marriage. And what it means is anyone who's got planets in Marga, it means they've been nominated by their ancestors to either continue or complete something those ancestors weren't able to finish in their lifetime. Now, I don't know that much about Madame Blavatsky's past, but there's another thing as well. Marga, in particular, deals with history and ancient knowledge. Ancient knowledge really does. This part of the sky, that's just what it means. So many of my clients who have this, they're interested in history, the family lineage, what went here, who did what, etc., blah, blah, blah. They're often very interested in ancient philosophies and all of this kind of stuff. You know, I'm no different, obviously. Here I am educating on what? Vedic astrology, which is over 5,000 years old. Madame Blavatsky also was interested in the Vedas, I can't even say it, the Upanishads, the ancient texts, and she was most interested in Tibetan Buddhism. Now, she interacted, she first came into touch with Buddhism when she was actually in Russia, where she and her family went to these ancient peoples that lived by the Volga River. And they were ancient peoples from back in the day who knew about you know, all the ancient philosophies of India and stuff. They were ethnically Russian, it seems, but they knew about this stuff. So that was one of her first exposures. So here you can see, quite literally, with 3 planets in Marga Nakshatra, she had that deep thirst for ancient knowledge. This is just part of the sky where people who have planets there, they're just curious, you know, about that stuff. And I just know that from my own life. I mean, look, I'm a British guy in the UK. Like, why on earth? How on earth did I get so interested in these ancient philosophies? And I'll have the numerology and all the different ologies, etc., and stuff like that. Before we move on, if we see here, her Mercury here is in the nakshatra, which is called Purva Falguni. Purva Falguni is a very creative part of Leo. It's a nakshatra ruled by Venus, and it is known as the front legs of the cot, or it's the hammock. So it deals with relaxation, ease, entertainment, marriage, etc., all of this kind of stuff. But it also shows as well, there's a very artistic bent, very, very creative element here. So we can also see Madame Blavatsky was also not only a writer and a philosopher of ancient knowledge, but also a performer. She would host these seances and probably did them extraordinarily well. Many people who said that they've met Madame Blavatsky said they were deeply impressed, and she influenced not only ordinary people and artists, you know, here we can see that artistic component here, but she also influenced scientists as well. They said many contemporary scientists, including Einstein, had Madame Blavatsky's books on their desks, including Nikola Tesla as well. So she had 2, you know, Einstein and Nikola Tesla, 2 bona fide geniuses that looked up to her. That, you know, we're talking, and so many of the things that she was talking about back in the 1800s about science and the creation and how it all works is actually checked out. Not absolutely everything, because of course some of the things she talked about is beyond the scope of science, which we would all know. So the fact that she was so respected, and even after her denouncements and various bits and bobs, people still very much respected her work, and she's still an influence today. And what I say is, if it's good enough for Nikola Tesla and Einstein, yeah, she was, you know, she was the real deal. Anyway, so immense skills and talents there. If we go to a fourth house, which also represents the fourth chakra, here we see the moon and Venus are technically Digbala. What does that mean? It's when a planet gets directional strength, and the moon and Venus both get directional strength in the fourth house. Why? The fourth house deals with mothering, nurturing, food, well, sort of food to an extent, but the roof over our head, comforts, luxuries and stuff like that, which both moon and Venus love. But there's an issue. Here, the moon is with Venus. You can see the degree is pretty close as well. You can see the degree is pretty close. Now, technically, moon and Venus, although very similar, are not considered friends. When Venus and moon are together, it can make a person almost overly emotional on a certain level. But here with Madame Blavatsky, it's a bit different because this is happening in Virgo. But it can show that there might be a contrary relationship with the mother, or the relationship with the mother will fluctuate quite a lot. It can also show that the mother has creative or artistic abilities. And one of the things, and here, and also as well, if we see here too, we can see the healing abilities of Madame Blavatsky and also the skills and possible healing abilities of the mother. Why? Because both of these planets are in a nakshatra called Hasta, and Hasta means hands. Basically all of my clients have this. I call it magical hands. Pisces, particularly Revati over here, I refer to as empath's corner. Virgo over here, particularly the Hasta section, I refer to as Reiki corner. Time and time and time again, people who have planets in Hasta Nakshatra, particularly the moon, are very talented with healing and Reiki in their hands. Yeah, so I don't doubt for a minute, it doesn't surprise me at all that she was able to do all of these incredible feats and all of this different kind of stuff. And of course, literally had magical hands because she could perform these things, these phenomena, in broad daylight, as opposed to some of the people that were doing their stuff at night. And that actually just reminds me, when I post this video, I'm going to post a link to a discussion I saw on YouTube recently talking about Madame Blavatsky, some of her feats, and giving the whole context of the spiritualist movement, which of course was inspired by Neptune, because literally the timing of the discovery is pretty much exact, and I've even checked it on my own software. So here the moon is strong because she's in the sign of Mercury, where she likes to be, and she's in her own nakshatra. So this gives incredible intuition. The moon is in intuition, psychic ability and stuff like that. So we can see her psychic ability was off the charts. Venus as well can also give the gift of prophecy. However, this Venus here, although contributing her powers, is causing some problems, because you'll see here, look, Venus is in the sign of Virgo, which means this Venus is technically debilitated in the main chart. What does Venus represent? Venus represents relationships of all kinds, marriage in particular, yeah, business, but also marriage and stuff like that. So Madame Blavatsky, she got married apparently when she was 17 years old, or 17 going on 18. She was very close to 18, and she married. That's where she actually got the name from, Blavatsky. I can't remember his name, but he was Blavatsky. She was 17 going on 18, and he was already 40 at that point. That's where she got the name from. They say she may have used it to try and get away from home, which wouldn't surprise me, because look, if we look here, Moon and Venus are in the fourth house. So she probably is having some emotional ups and downs with her mother, wanted to get away. And so she married. And I think it was only 3 months after marrying him, she then traveled off around the world. Now, she said the marriage, and apparently he said too, that the marriage was never consummated. I think they tried to get divorced, or he tried to divorce her several times. But, you know, the Russians being sticklers for these things, they weren't allowed to. However, from what I understand, at least in the UK, under common law and stuff like that, a marriage is not truly a marriage unless it is consummated. Yeah, unless someone, you know, well, you know what that means. You don't need me to be explicit on that. So in a way, I think her being so intelligent, so gifted, she used that as a means to escape and travel she did. Now, if we look over here, now look, she's got Ketu in the 9th house. And the 9th house is a house of travel, but look at the degree. Now, the degree in her chart is 0, 0, and it's 16 minutes. So really, Ketu, remember the nose of the moon travel backwards, has pretty much almost left her 9th house and is sort of in her 8th house. Now, Ketu in the 8th or the 9th is going to give incredible intuition. Ketu in Aquarius does really well because, well, what it is, even though Ketu doesn't necessarily like the air signs, he does like Aquarius because he gets to do a lot of research. Scientific mind. He loves all of that processing, digging deep research, going deep down, going down the rabbit hole. That's what Ketu does. He's like a little vortex. So he is between the 9th house and the 8th house. The 8th house he loves. Ketu absolutely loves the 8th house because he's one of the co-rulers of Scorpio, which is the 8th sign. So Ketu in the 8th house will give someone spooky, uncanny intuitions, otherworldly experiences, otherworldly perceptions and stuff like that, which is one of the things that she was famous for. In her 8th house, she's also got another stellium here, which is technically 4. She's got Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune, and Ceres all in the 8th house. Oh my goodness, in Capricorn. Now, the Capricorn element does stabilize that 8th house somewhat because, of course, Capricorn is an earth sign, but it also adds a lot of pressure. My nickname for Capricorn is the sign of pressure. But we see she has an extraordinary combination here. Now, one of the things that she has is here, her Jupiter is debilitated. Yeah, Jupiter is debilitated. Now, remember what I said, Jupiter represents what? The husband in a woman's chart. And then when Jupiter is debilitated, it just means the husband doesn't quite fulfill his duties, his roles, or something goes wrong, or, you know, he doesn't take out the trash, or he gets sick, or this, that, and the other, or in some way he doesn't perform. Sometimes as well, it can mean the husband might be gay, yeah? Or he's got a lot of debts, or there's baggage, or something like that. Now, remember, Madame Blavatsky said the marriage was never consummated. And here, with this combination here, I think she's at, well, of course she's right. You know, she said it. I don't think she would have, well, you never know. But looking at the chart, it does lend some truth to this. It looks like, yes, at least with her first husband, that relationship wasn't consummated. She also said that she has a fire in her mind. And she said she's got a fire at the top of a mountain and a glacier at the base. Yeah, that was a very elegant way of saying that she wasn't so into sex and, you know, all of this stuff. And even her mother said, you know, you're not like the average woman. Yeah, but she had such spiritual gifts. And this is often what happens when a person does have spiritual gifts, where they're able to tread into the beyond. Things like sex and marriage and stuff like that, just less important to them. It doesn't mean that they don't have any sex at all or they never get married. Of course, you know, Madame Blavatsky did, and, you know, what have you. But it's not their focus. It doesn't have the same grip, because when one has the tastes, the flavors of this, of spiritual enlightenment, and she actually was bona fide enlightened, these things, they don't have the same appeal or pull. And when we look here as well, Uranus, I actually consider pretty much sort of like an asexual planet. Why? Because he was castrated. You would have seen in my videos before, I've described this, but he was castrated by Kronos, his son, Saturn, because Gaia, Saturn's mother, and the wife and sister of Uranus, yeah, was sick and tired and of all the love making and what have you. And she was like, right. She had a chat with Saturn, and I described this in the book. She said, look, you need to cut Daddy's bits off. It's not as crude as that in the book, but that's essentially what happened. So Uranus could represent, is a challenging energy, is electrical. He also deals with astrology and the occult, all kinds of occult sciences, but there's that element of castration, something being cut off or separated in a shocking or surprising way. So if we see here as well, you know, she got married, but then within months she was off, yeah, because it really, for her, it wasn't about the sex, it was about the freedom. Uranus is the planet of what? Freedom, deals with rebels, yeah? Rebels and unconventional thinkers. Here, look at the degree. This Uranus here is at 20 degrees 47 minutes, very close to Jupiter. Now, Jupiter represents Guru in the chart. So Jupiter represents gurus and teachers of all kinds and all of this kind of stuff. And she did have teachers, but one of the things she said was that they were invisible and they were the masters that were coming to her. So we can see here, Guru is with Uranus, and Uranus also represents otherworldly, non-physical beings and outer space. Yeah, he's the higher octave of Mercury. So this is high knowledge that Uranus can contain. And she said these masters, you know, taught her. In fact, one day she was actually in London, and this guy that she saw in her mind's eye, which she thought was a figment of her imagination, turned up physically in London. And then, you know, he took her to Tibet and all of this kind of stuff. And she learned so much more. So you can see this extraordinary combination here. And we see here Neptune is here as well. Now, what does Neptune do? Neptune dissolves the boundary between the three-dimensional world and the realms beyond. So Neptune has that otherworldly quality, can give one great in spiritual insight. And this is also happening in the 8th house. So she's got this Guru, Jupiter, Uranus and Neptune combination with Ceres, which is also where we give our devotion, almost like a mother's love. Ceres is the Roman name given to the goddess Demeter, goddess of harvest, who famously had the daughter Persephone, who was stolen and taken into the underworld by Hades / Pluto, who is also the co-ruler of Scorpio, which is the 8th sign relative to the 8th house. So we can see here that Madame Blavatsky underwent several initiations into the mysteries, as she described, but you can see it very clearly here in her chart. Even though this is the sign of rooted and practical Capricorn, you can't have this much energy in your 8th house. What this shows is that she wanted to demonstrate this knowledge, give this people to knowledge in practical ways that they could digest. She wanted to show that she could perform the phenomena that many of the spiritualists were doing, and the mesmerizer, there's the Mesmer, I think he was called, and he did a lot of experiments and lots of shows and stuff like that. And I think that's where we get the word mesmerized from. But she could do this in broad daylight. So I think it's almost that Capricorn actually took that supernatural energy and made it even more concrete and manifest. I think if it had been in Aquarius, it would have all been in her mind. She would have written the books, but maybe people wouldn't have understood them. And if it had been in Sagittarius, this combination here would have been almost kind of fanatical and too over the top. So it's almost like that pressurizing aspect of Saturn actually helped ground a lot of that stuff. And when we consider that K2 is actually here, really contributing its energy as well, because it's really pretty much in that house, that adds even more. Is it any wonder that she was such a famed mystic, psychic? She would download whole books of Tibetan ancient text, translate into English, and then scholars who were familiar with these ancient texts that no one else knew, they were like, oh my goodness, she's actually described, you know, huge swathes. And she did, what was it, the hidden life of Isis, or something Isis, forgive me for not remembering the name of the book. And she did some other ones as well that were more practical in nature. But we can see here her immense gifts. If we look here, she's got Pluto in the 10th house. Now, what's the 10th house all about? The 10th house is about name, fame, reputation, highest achievements, our ultimate dharma, how we appear in public, how we serve the public, legacies that we have to others. And if we see here, look, she's got Pluto here. Now, what is Pluto? Pluto, of course, like I said, is the natural indicator of the 8th house on his own. And she's got the 8th house energy in her 10th house of highest achievements. But look at the sign, it's in Pisces, which deals with what? Spirituality, intuition, healing. The positive sides of Pluto is that it has a powerfully alchemical and transformative abilities. So, of course, she was operating before Pluto was discovered in 1930, but it's almost like she had a plutonic effect on society that permeated literally her whole the rest of the 19th century that she was in, and well into the 20th century. So that's the kind of thing Pluto can do. When Pluto's in an angle, here it's in the 10th house angle, which is one of the most powerful. When Pluto is conjunct a luminary like the moon, but particularly the sun, those people can have a huge impact on many swathes of people, because it's either with the luminary or it's in that angle. So here she's got that Pluto in that angle, really emphasizing all of that in the nakshatra Revati. I call Pisces empath's corner, but Revati in particular. So this also shows she had tremendous compassion for humanity, almost this obsession with the soul of man. She speaks a lot about how man is a divine creature, how the different structures and thought forms come together to help us incarnate, and how those thought forms, in terms of the etheric body, etc. and stuff, make our shape, make our form. All of the different, remember as well, she's also spoken of now, Pisces is also oceanic, relative to it's the 12th sign of the zodiac, relative to the 12th house, which is a very oceanic house. What was the many things that she spoke about? She also spoke about the island of Lemuria, which disappeared under the sea. And Lemuria was said to be off the coast of India, was a huge landmass. The other one, of course, was Atlantis. So again, you can see that oceanic element. Pluto I refer to as the Alpha Omega planet. He's the one at the very end. I mean, we've got a few other dwarf planets scattered around now, but really he is the last one. So Pluto is that boundary. Saturn represents the boundary between the physical world and the more spiritual world. Yeah, because he's that liminal planet. He's the last that can be seen with the naked eye. And then you've got Neptune, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, etc. So Pluto is the trans-Neptunian planets, the ones that are even beyond that, out there in the Kuiper belt. So Pluto actually represents the division or the liminal point of the deep collective unconscious and the outer space and the intergalactic. So I would say Pluto really is an intergalactic planet. Whenever you see Uranus and Pluto together, those people have been abducted by aliens, or their mother's been abducted by aliens, or the parents really into it, or this, that, and the other. They have these alien experiences. I've just seen it time and time again. So Pluto is really quite intergalactic in that nature, and she's already got it in the spiritual sign of Pisces, in the nakshatra of Revati. The deity of Revati is Pushan, and Pushan is seen as the shepherd of the gods. He helps lost objects be found. He helps all helpless animals and all helpless creatures, including people and stuff like that. That recalls to me a story where she helped an opera singer. I think she was traveling in Istanbul or something like that, and she found this guy that was stabbed on the floor and virtually dead. Pluto, planet of death, yeah, that kind of thing. and she sort of kind of resuscitated him and managed to get help to come to him, and they stayed friends for over 20 years until he passed away. She practically saved his life. So you can see here this supernatural abilities. Also as well, you see these planets here are retrograde. Neptune's retrograde, Uranus is retrograde, Jupiter's retrograde, Pluto's retrograde, which means they were closer to the Earth, which in Vedic astrology means they're more powerful, but it also can show there's more karma on those planets. You have to squeeze a bit harder to get the juice out of the orange. So we can see here she traveled a lot, she wandered a lot. This is a woman of philosophy and intelligence. If we look here, she's got Chiron in Aries, but in her 11th house. Now, wherever Chiron is, shows the wound that we can receive in life, which could be mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, or even physical. Yeah, sometimes all of those things. Now, the 11th house deals with what? Hopes and dreams. It deals with the attainment of desires, and it also deals with networks and friends and influential people. So Madame Blavatsky did have a huge impact on people, but her friends, many of her friends in the media turned against her. Yeah, even people within her own organization, because the 11th house deals with groups and organizations of all kinds. She's the founder of the Philosophical Society, which still goes today. But at one point, they were, there was arguments, disputes, etc. Her reputation was being besmirched, all of this stuff. So we can see here that wounding. However, in the D9, which is the second half of life chart, we can see here her Chiron goes to the 6th house in Scorpio. So that means healing via deep mystical means. Once you've touched, the divine in that way or what have you, one has a different perspective on life on Earth, school and stuff like that. So really, we can see here her occult knowledge and her mysticism really kind of helped her. And we can see here she's got Vargotama, which means a rising sign, which means the rising sign is the same as in the D1 and the D9, empowering that further with the moon there, and the moon adores being in Gemini. So we can see incredible intelligence, gift for speech, writing of all kinds. Ceres is there as well, showing that later on in life, particularly in the second half of life, it was more about herself nurturing and her being a better mother to herself. Essentially, that's really what that position can mean. I don't think I need to go over what, I'll just talk here. So if we see here Saturn, of course, and Mars still together because they're literally at the same degree in the sign of Cancer. So this Mars became debilitated in the second half of her life, and the Saturn wasn't in the best shape either. And we can see here Uranus is there. So that's quite a malefic combination for her. She did have some health issues towards the end. It's in the second house again, which deals with money and speech and education. So she did have to work in a little bit of a sweatshop at certain points. And her teachings, were somewhat compromised, although, of course, I think she's been vindicated by history. But look, she's got a Jupiter in Leo, fabulous, in the 3rd house. Again, great gift for speech. She's got an exalted Mercury here in his own sign in the 4th house. Again, great gifts of speech, knowledge, wisdom, education, that kind of thing. She's got Neptune still stays in the 8th house in the same sign, Vargotama, so that great connection there. And we see here the sun in her chart goes to Pisces strong. So again, this illumination of Piscean qualities. And Rahu with Venus goes to her 11th house, which is a bit hot and a bit bombastic, but it does also show as well her legacy and impact on society as a whole, because the 11th house is relative to Aquarius, which is the sign of humanity. So I think that's all I'm going to say on that for now. I hope you guys found that interesting. Again, it was a lot of detail, but there you go. That is Madame Blavatsky. Fascinating person. Truly a person, and her chart confirms it, of genius. This is a word that is often bandied about, but in her case, it is true. because she was so utterly extraordinary. It's too long for me to list everything there. And with people not being sure, her contemporaries not being sure of her phenomena and her abilities, you can see it there in the chart. So I hope you found that interesting. I'll look at that 1 hour 9 minutes, went over a little bit, but she was so interesting. I will leave it there, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and let me know in the comments who you'd like me to look at next. All right, bye for now. Cheers. Still waiting to end, methinks. Ah, has that happened? See, this is what happens. Things get a little bit supernatural. Maybe Madame Blavatsky doesn't want me to stop. And it says here,